I did post a video on Instagram every single day for 508 days in a row. Through all this social media creation was a corresponding amount of social media consumption. And I just felt the effects on my life that I was increasingly looking down on my phone. And so I built a screen time app and then I launched it and it had a great successful launch.
How successful are we talking? Can you share any numbers?
That is a great question.
Yoni, great to have you on the show. Why did you post a video on Instagram every day for 508 days? What was the starting point?
Ultimately, I think the core reason why I started was because it was scary and difficult. I've always considered what would it be like to be in front of a camera. I know through experience, it's always been a bit cringe and uncomfortable for me. And I thought maybe there's something good on the other side of that cringe and discomfort. And there's simply no way to find out other than to do it. So I made an account with 0 followers. Didn't tell anybody, didn't tell my friends, didn't tell my girlfriend, and just started posting into the ether, unedited videos in the little Instagram camera recording feature. Eventually, maybe after a few weeks, some random videos started picking up traction. I think, truthfully, the reason was because the videos were pretty raw and unedited and amateur, and there's something that's relatable in that. Through many small steps, you end up 508 days into the future. So that's kind of the high level.
I imagine you didn't set out with the goal of 508 days being the number. You might have had, did you have any specific goal for how many days in a row you're going to do this?
Truthfully, no. I didn't know how far it would go or what it would look like. I just needed this forcing function of daily posting in order to put in the reps. To some degree, it is a volume game, at least to getting into the habit of it. And so the daily posting was that forcing function for me.
Do you remember a moment or a video or a day where it felt like this was no longer a weird, cringy, foreign thing, but it just felt natural? Because I imagine in the beginning, if you didn't have a specific goal for the number of days you were going to do this, you must have been negotiating, am I going to keep doing this? You know, like, why keep going? And at what point did it become not a question that, okay, I'm definitely going to keep going?
Something around a month, maybe 30 days plus or minus, a couple weeks. You look back and think, what do you do every day without exception for weeks or months or years? There's not many things, that you do every single day. Certainly not habits or hobbies that every single day without an exception, no days off, no weekends off, nothing. So after 30 days, this is sort of, it becomes ingrained into your daily routine. It's like, I did this 30 days. 31 is not so hard. The hardest thing by far is day one, where you go from somebody who has never posted anything and is not in the habit of creating any content to somebody who's now, making an account online and posting. So that's by far, it probably took me 10 years to make that one post. And then after that, it's just off to the races.
What were the early days of your videos about? How did you decide what you would create content about?
So my first maybe 10 videos were about nothing. They were just, I didn't think anybody was watching this. It would get 112 views and four likes. And so that's functionally 0. Really, my objective was to get over the fear and sort of self-judgment and all this. So I just wanted to do it more for that than for telling beautiful stories and for, changing people's lives. I just wanted to desensitize myself to this feeling of posting online. So my first video, I said, today is day 1 of doing nothing for every follower I gain. Follow me to find out. I said that because I found somebody who, made some similar videos. I think some creator who had already a sizable audience who was kind of riffing or parodying people who do these, run a mile or do a jumping jack or whatever, these video series that people come up with. To me, it wasn't about what I was saying or the objective of the video. It was just to record something and put it on the timeline. So that was probably my first 10 videos, whereas today's day 7 of doing nothing for every follower I gain. You have no followers after all. So you might as well be recording and saving it to your camera roll and not uploading it anywhere. Instead, you just make an account with 0 followers and post it there.
I have to think at some point, when you started getting some views, you started getting some feedback and interaction that you started thinking about making decisions in those videos to try to create more of that. When did that happen? When did you start thinking more critically about how you produce the video, not just simply posting a video?
Something like a week in.
So pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly. I wasn't interested in posting day 147 of doing nothing for every follower I gain. At some point, it's not so uncomfortable to post anymore. And now that I'm posting, and now that I'm going to take the time out of my day to create something, maybe I can try to create different things. Maybe it doesn't just need to be talking head with no microphone. Eventually, maybe you get a microphone, but maybe you can have a B-roll overlays, and maybe there can be a story that you tell. And it was maybe 3 weeks in that I told a story of how I put an offer on a house, and I've never bought a house before, and I didn't know what I was doing, but there's only one way to find out. And I told some story in 40 seconds along these lines. And this video went viral, right? This video got 50,000 views, which to me was like, 50 million views. The Instagram algorithm served it to a population of 65 and up women. It was all older women for whatever reason. So I went from having, 20 followers to having 500 followers, and they were all older women. And all the comments in this post were, "You remind me of my grandson."
Wow.
"Oh, you bought your first house, very cute." For whatever reason, the algorithm is funny in these ways, and it serves it to older women. That was like a crazy, sort of ridiculous. I think the algorithm has a lot of randomness, and that was my first taste of randomness. And now suddenly I have hundreds of followers and hundreds of comments and all this stuff. The next day when I posted, there's a little bit of pressure, right? Now I have hundreds of followers. There's going to be hundreds of people who see tomorrow's video, whereas yesterday's video, by comparison, had no views. So now I started being a little bit more thoughtful. It's like, oh, I can tell stories. It was also with B-roll overlays. It was like a little bit more produced of a video. It took me not 2 minutes, but maybe 45 minutes to make. And so now I started thinking, what are the stories I want to tell? Do I want to tell things about my life, about current events, about my opinions on the world? And so it was probably around that point, 3 weeks in, where I started being a little bit more thoughtful, and I started being a bit more intentional about what type of content do I want to make, what formats, all this stuff.
What do you think is the most time you spent making one of these videos?
Probably 4 or 5 hours.
And were you doing that all on your phone?
All on my phone, yeah. For the first many months. At some point, I started using the laptop and doing a little bit of desktop editing, but yeah, it was on my phone.
Did you see a correlation between how much time you spent making a video and how it performed?
No. If you look at my account now, and you look at the videos that have performed the best and how much time I spent on them relative to the videos where I spent the most time, I mean, in many cases are just this like very silly little meme afterthought, 8-second video ends up with 10 million views. Whereas you spend 5 hours on a video and, it has a very kind of average or baseline performance. So I would say very low correlation between the amount of time spent editing in my case.
So if you're going to make day 509 tomorrow, talk to me about your thought process, how you would go through thinking about what that video is and how you would make it.
What my creator journey evolved into was me painting a picture and telling the story of myself. It wasn't trying to make relatable content or social trends or any of this stuff, memes. It was me telling the story of myself as a kind of scrappy entrepreneur. And I told over 508 days, this was kind of the series that I built, was the trials and tribulations of kind of a relatable, middling, successful entrepreneur. If I were to continue posting, if I did 509 tomorrow, I would probably give some form of status update. What's the progress, the progressions of my business, or sort of what are my priorities? That just me personally is what through 508 days my content turned into. And I think the story that I'm interested to tell, but yeah, it would probably be something to that effect.
That's so interesting. And it's also really encouraging because that feels very attainable for anybody watching this to basically say, take your story and tell it. I mean, you and I both spend a lot of time on X. It's kind of the old build in public, but brought to Instagram Uh, and instead of every video being like, here's an update on the business, there's a lot more personal reflection than just pure business economics, business wins. But I'm sure it's really intricately linked. Am I hearing that right?
Totally. Totally. And I think if you're doing a daily posting thing, and if tomorrow your objective is to post a video to maintain this streak, you're on day 400 something, then this is sort of a forcing function to just say what's on top of mind. Maybe if somebody was a much more intentional architect of their timeline, of their feed, of their of their videos, then maybe they would incorporate current events and in some very intentional way, and script this video relative to what's going on in the world. But for me, it's just I oftentimes would sit down in front of a camera, click record, and not know what's about to happen. And it's just, my objective is to tell the story of myself in this point in time, November 18th. And so I think that's like a much easier hurdle to clear, is just like tell what's on your mind, hit record and start talking. Anybody can do it. So I think that's why I had the success that I had through social media.
Were you using Instagram a lot before you started this challenge?
I was, but I was using Instagram a lot more throughout this challenge, for sure. I think once you're in this cycle of posting and you're a creator now, then this is your creator hub, right? Your work product is delivered on this platform. I definitely spent more and more time on my phone, for better or worse, the more I was posting.
You have about 19,000 followers on X, 188,000 followers on Instagram. Which of these do you value more?
That is a great question. So I'm a techie. I'm into AI tools. I'm into software businesses, technologies. Like, I love this stuff. X is where this kind of is upstream of everything. X is where the new AI tools get launched, the company's funding announcements are announced. X is sort of the first place where tech news hits the internet, and then it percolates slowly through everything else. It ends up on TikTok, ends up on Reddit, it ends up on Instagram. So to me, I have a particular affinity to X, to Twitter, just because I'm a techie. But I completely understand why for other people it would be Instagram, or it would be TikTok, or it would be YouTube. But for me, I have a kind of a unique love for X, I think.
They're so different. I've been spending a little bit more time on Instagram, which is part of the reason why I was interested in talking to you, because I don't feel like I've really gotten a ton of traction there. And I wanted to learn what you had to share. X, I've had a lot more history and traction on. But what I notice as I'm doing more Instagram, there's so much more churn. It feels like people are much faster to follow you there and also much faster to unfollow you there. Whereas on X, I may not get a very high performing post, but it's not going to trigger a bunch of unfollows unless I'm saying something outrageous. But Instagram just seems to come with the territory. It seems like you just hope to have more follows than unfollows on a monthly basis, and that's how you grow. But it's not this incremental, every new follower is with you for a very long time. At least that's been my experience. What was your experience?
I feel the same way. It may also be some bias in that Instagram shows you a line of how many people are following you and unfollowing you. In my case on Instagram, I have 200 people unfollow me every day, but 300 people follow me every day. So there's a net growth or something like this. On Twitter, on X, it's yeah, to your point, I think there's not a lot of unfollowing going on. It could be something in the psychology of short form reels, in that everything is very ephemeral on this platform, TikTok, Instagram, where you can scroll for an hour and not even remember what just happened. So X feels a little bit more intentional in that way. Maybe there's a little bit more thought goes into a tweet or a story that's told over text versus a video that as you scroll through, maybe it goes in one ear and out the other. So maybe people have this bias towards clicking around, following, unfollowing, perhaps more on Instagram.
At some point, you developed an app, which I think happened within this journey. Can you talk about that? Why that happened? How that happened?
For sure. So I'm lifelong entrepreneur. Many small businesses that have mild success or fail or peter out one way or another. Part of my interest in posting on social media was selfish in nature, that I wanted to build some audience that I could monetize, right? I have all these businesses, and when one fails and the next one begins, you start from square zero, from scratch. Nobody knows who you are. Nobody knows the story of the entrepreneur behind the scenes. You start some new business, you need to completely build it up from zero. My thesis was that if I had some following, if some people related to and were interested in the story of myself as an entrepreneur, and they watched as I build whatever businesses I build, maybe it can, in turn, feed back into the business or sustain the business. So earlier in my 500-day stretch, I had actually an e-commerce business where I was selling products on Amazon, and I told the story of that business, and it grew to something like $130,000 in sales before a unfortunate cease and desist, some kind of patent landmine that I stepped on in the e-commerce ecosystem, shut down that business. And I told that story in full transparency. And I think people really relate to full transparency, where it's like business has ups and downs and awesome things and ugly things. And I just fully told that story. And so I built, some of the audience through that. And then there was this period of introspection where I was thinking about what's next. And I'm a software engineer, so I'm a techie by trade. And I've always wanted to have some sort of software business or to create some technology that, improves people's lives. And through all this social media creation was a corresponding amount of social media consumption. And I was always on my phone, and I was always scrolling these feeds. And, as a consumer of social media, it's like a random rewards mechanism. You're scrolling and you're going to get maybe some really funny video or really cool video or really interesting video. That's why you keep scrolling. But as a creator, you get likes and comments and notifications and follows, and maybe somebody interesting is going to like your video, or maybe somebody's going to repost it, or somebody's going to DM you or whatever. And so it also keeps the creators really, really sort of sucked into these platforms. And I just felt the effects on my life that I was increasingly looking down on my phone. And I was looking for a next business or a next project to both build and share on my platform. And so I built a screen time app called Brain Rot that shows a cute little avatar of your brain rot the more time you spend on your phone. I built this to solve a problem that I was very genuinely having in my life, which was that I was totally brain rotting on my phone all the time. And I was growing an audience over here, and I was growing an audience over there, and I was tweeting, and I was posting, and I was making videos, and I was always on my phone. So I built this app, Brain Rot, and then I launched it to my audience. And it had, a great successful launch thanks to the sort of audience and traction that I was able to build throughout that, 300 something days of storytelling up to that point.
How successful are we talking? Can you share any numbers?
Yeah, so Brain Rot, in its launch debut, I made a video where I said, today I'm officially announcing my app, Brain Rot. That video got 1 million views, which turned into maybe $10,000 of revenue in a weekend, right? A few $1,000s per day in revenue, which to me is like completely mind-blowing sums of money. Then I launched on a platform called Product Hunt, which is for sort of software techie products that are launching every day. There's a new launch leaderboard of who has the most upvotes in the world on this platform, Product Hunt. I launched Brain Rot the next day on this Product Hunt, and it got #1 in the world.
Wow.
Which was just a totally crazy moment. That generated probably another $20,000, $30,000 of revenue in a day.
Wow.
Something like this, these kind of crazy sums. And so you can imagine the excitement, the euphoria, all this tension that had built up over 300 days of telling different stories, of saying, today's day one of doing nothing, starting an e-commerce business, ending an e-commerce business, all of this kind of timeline, this sequence of events. And then here I come up with an idea for an app. I write the code for that app. I was sharing the App Store rejections that I was getting. Apple is very particular with how they approve and reject apps for various reasons. So I had to go through 5 or 6 or 7 rejections for small things that I had to tweak before it was ultimately approved and released and all this. And I built up this tension in the storyline and this tension in myself that, I'm really anxious to see what's the result, the culmination of all this. And then sort of this big launch. And Brainrot is still out there to this day, over 100,000 users. It's one of the screen time apps. It's totally punching above its weight. So it's been amazingly fun, and I still operate the business today.
So I imagine you're probably constantly thinking about, should I be making more videos as a distribution mechanism for this app? And yet we have this post of, I wouldn't do that 500-day challenge again. So talk to me about where you've landed here and why you've taken a break on Instagram and what the plan is as far as content goes for the future.
I think that daily posting is an amazing forcing function to get your feet wet into social media, to start posting. If you're afraid of posting, you don't know what to post, just make a video that says, I don't know what to post. And then tomorrow say, okay, well, yesterday I didn't know what to post, but today I'm thinking about this. And just start making videos and start flexing that muscle and start overcoming what they call cringe mountain, which is that it just feels insurmountably cringe. And you realize that it doesn't matter. And you become like a much more strong, durable person. It's like it's the journey and it's not the outcome. It's the person who you become along the journey. And so for that, it was tremendously successful. And obviously it created a successful launch of a successful business. So why would I ever stop? I think at some point there's diminishing returns. And I would also say there's different ways that you can approach content creation. What I was doing was not batch recording anything. I wasn't batch editing. I didn't have editors. It was all me. And I didn't have a content day where I would generate, 100 pieces of content, which would fuel the next weeks and months. Every single day, I sat in front of a camera, I clicked record, I talked into it, and then I edited it, and then I posted it, which over time began to eat into my ability to just be present in the world, because I would put it off until the evening. I naturally procrastinate everything. And then at 8 p.m., it's like, oh man, let me drop what I'm doing, and I need to go edit, record, and post a video. Over time, that slowly wears at you. And as Brainrot began to, do well as a business, I, as the sole developer of that app, I want to sit down and I want to write some code. I want to, make some features. I want to, do something. And every evening, I have a full-time job, by the way. So this is what I'm doing in the evening. And it would just break my focus every evening that I need to go record, edit, and post. And I kind of got into this place with my content where I was getting some predictable number of views for most of my videos, maybe around 70,000 views. You can always post a video and maybe it'll go viral and maybe you'll get 1,000 new followers, or maybe you'll get 1 million views, or maybe you'll make $1,000 or whatever it might be. But over time, I think the significance of those like potential accolades you can get from tomorrow's video kind of diminished, where now I have 180,000 followers. The incremental 1,000 followers is less meaningful. The incremental 1,000 views, 100,000 views, whatever, is less meaningful. So over time, I did ultimately decide to get out of this daily streak. Not to say that I am done, as a creator. I will certainly continue posting content. I just had to kind of step back. This was only a few weeks ago, and regroup. So I will totally be back, just probably not in a daily video capacity.
I found that you were posting to TikTok and YouTube as well, though I don't know if it was each daily video. But those platforms did not seem to have the same result as Instagram. What do you think the difference is?
They are different platforms, and they are tailored towards different types of content and different types of consumers of that content. So YouTube Shorts, I think, is a younger audience base. And if you want to do well in YouTube Shorts, to my understanding, you need to have videos that like a 13-year-old wants to consume, or a 17-year-old. My videos are storytelling of the life of a entrepreneur in his mid to late 20s. It's maybe not so interesting to the average YouTube Shorts consumer. And so my videos never really performed well on YouTube Shorts. TikTok likes less edited content, maybe shot raw on a phone. or even in the TikTok, reticle, in the TikTok camera. My videos were recorded on this thing for the most part. For most of the videos, this is a DJI Osmo Pocket. It's a nice little camera, it can shoot horizontal video or vertical video. And I would just use it for vertical video. I'd put it right up here where you're looking at me now from, and I would just talk into that camera. I think it's a 4K camera. It's a little bit higher quality video. I think it just didn't perform as well on TikTok. So there's these kind of nuances of what the different platforms like. I just happened to start on Instagram. Things went okay for me there. And that's just sort of my content style seems to have found its niche over there more than it did on the others.
Let's turn this into like a hypothetical exercise. Let's say that I wanted tomorrow to start an Instagram posting streak. How would you encourage me to start that process? And I'm talking me specifically, and then maybe we can extrapolate to whoever. But if it makes it easier to say you specifically, feel free to do that.
I think the first question I would ask is why? What do you want from it?
I like the game of it. I've actually been thinking about this where I think as creators, we have seasons of steak and we have seasons of sizzle. And we all know people that are all sizzle, no steak, but you can't win that game forever. And short form content to me is more of like a sizzle game. And for people who spend all their time making steak, they look around at all these people who have mastered the sizzle and they say, what's going on? You don't even have any steak over there. And so I think it's fun to try to flip the season from time to time and say, what if I actually did just focus on this? What could I do to make this better? But what I think I have is the curse of knowledge to a degree, where I've talked to so many creators and I see what people are doing, and it comes from years of practice. And what I haven't done is say, I'm going to start an account from zero like you did. I'm going to start an account from zero and I'm just going to post and see what happens. I feel pressure of people already know my stuff to a degree. Is there a lower threshold that I don't want to go below of cringiness to put that at risk? So what I'm inspired by your story, and what I'm curious to hear if this is something you would recommend is, should I just remove all expectations and pretense and just go back to like straight up documenting just in the phone like I've done? Forgo the studio experience here and just talk straight to the camera.
The first social media platforms were, Facebook, obviously, MySpace, were just about sharing with your friends, right? And like maybe posting a picture from a party this weekend or from your vacation or whatever. The first video platform, YouTube, was just about recording on your camcorder and uploading it. And it was like very much tailored towards this kind of raw home footage. And over time, as creator economy blossoms and, we end up here in 2025, it's hard to go back from what Look at your studio. It's beautiful. You've talked to, some of the biggest creators in the world. You know exactly what this kind of ecosystem looks like. But to go back to what was the point of all this in the first place, it was just recording on your phone and posting it. And these phones, these are amazing cameras. Like, these are amazing microphones. So it's, it's not a camcorder anymore. It's like a 4K HD, whatever. These new phones are amazing. So yeah, probably ditch the mic, ditch the, 4K camera, ditch the studio setup, and just go back to what it feels like to FaceTime your friend. And I think that there's something that's like very nice and wholesome and comforting in that. And you'll get 112 views and nobody will know who you are because you'll put a different name on your profile or whatever it is. Instagram will serve it to strangers. It's a kind of lower stakes and you can experiment and play with different things. And one of my last videos, which was, this is my impression of a 27-year-old who doesn't know what they're doing with their life. And I said, hey, everyone, thanks for joining. Like, pretending to be on a Zoom meeting at work. Are we waiting for anybody? Jim? All right, we'll give him a few minutes. Very silly video. It took me all of 4 minutes to make, and it gets 6 million views. And so it's like these funny little experiments that are low stakes because you're recording with your phone. It's fun. It's nice. It's wholesome. So I would say, yeah, ditch all the equipment. Make an account that nobody knows, put a new name on it, and maybe there's something to be learned there.
That's interesting. It's an interesting challenge to say, what if I was starting from zero and just tried going at it from there? The example of that kind of joke video you just described, sometimes I talk myself out of posting things because it seems so out of the ordinary for what people would know me for, that it's like, what's the point? If that's not aligned with what I make, what I sell most of the time, is that counterproductive to post that? What's your take?
This is one of the curses of building an audience or becoming known for something, is that you become pigeonholed into what is the public's perception of you, and then you're playing into what is the public's perception of you rather than just who you are, because who you are has been shaped through the public lens to be Jay from Creator Science. And so now Jay from Creator Science can't post silly, goofy little memes anymore because he has a high polish, high production quality studio. And it's tough because there was a Jay before Creator Science who was just interested about creators and creating, which is how you ended up where you are today. It's tough. I mean, this I think is a sort of something that all creators have to deal with. Staying in their lane, staying in their niche. Maybe more creators need to make accounts with 0 followers and, just play around in there and get back to what started this whole thing in the first place. You sort of get to this curse of success where a Mr. Beast can't make a funny, silly video anymore. He has to make like a Mr. Beast video, a $10 million production set. So yeah, it is funny. This is sort of just the arc of the creator experience.
Do you identify as a creator?
I think so. I posted 500 plus videos onto social media. I want to say that gives me the right to call myself a creator. Probably as I go to the grocery store and to the gym and through my daily life. I don't so much identify as a creator, probably because it's not my primary source of income. If it were my primary source of income, maybe I would be more inclined to perceive myself as with this label. I'm just a guy who likes to make videos online sometimes.
Do you have anything you believe to be true about short form video, we'll say, but you don't have enough evidence to prove it?
I think that short form video is likely a net negative on its consumers. I think that the short formization of content as it's come over the last 5 to 10 years has caused our attention spans to contract with the length of the content, has created incentives that, the more rage bait that you can produce in the shortest amount of time, the highest yield you'll get from your videos. I think that probably short form video on average is not good for people to consume. You know how you feel on a day that you spent 6 hours consuming short form versus 6 minutes. Like, you don't feel good after consuming a lot of short form content. So, because it's digital crack. I mean, it is just so addicting and easy to scroll your life away. And I think over the coming 5, 10, 20 years, there will be more and more and more conversations about how we're just losing our lives to our phones. What does it mean to spend 6 hours on your phone in a day? Well, you're only awake for 18 hours, so that's a third of your life. So, if the life expectancy is 75 years old, it's like a meaningful contraction of the amount of time that you spend in the real world. I think that there will be more and more people talking about that over the coming years.
I agree with you on that take. I love that take. What are Yoni's rules for short form? If somebody's getting into this game today, they say, I'm inspired by Yoni's challenge and I want to jump in. What are like the base level facts or understanding that people should go into this knowing?
So I'll preface my answer with saying that Yoni's short form is probably significantly different from another creator's short form or even the average creator's short form. But my bias towards all of the content that I created was that it's not that deep. It doesn't need to be that nicely polished. It doesn't need to be that well thought through. I posted 500 and something videos, of which probably 99% were unscripted. So I had a unique approach in that the story that you tell when you click record on the camera and start talking, free flowing, is the story that should be told. Don't take it too seriously. Don't overthink it. I never made a decision matrix of this hook times this story times this call to action. I never did any of that stuff. I just spoke into the camera the same way that I'm speaking to you now. If I had a lot of dead space, I would clip that out. But for the most part, minimally edited, minimally kind of architected, as close to raw as possible, authentic storytelling. It resonates with people. In a world where there's more and more highly edited, high retention, baiting, crazy hooks, this stuff, just a nice, calm, authentic story told on a feed, I think has its place. So that's my advice.